Welcome, and I just want to say thank you. You are still here. I know it's only week one, but there's I'm front loading with a lot of information. But yeah, there's a lot here, and I hope that you are taking the time to really deeply work with this material. And I know that a lot of you are, because I've been receiving some wonderful emails in response to my questions. And I just want to say thank you to everyone who has responded to my questions in email. I really, really appreciate your interaction and participation. So I realized from the recent emails I received in response to a question that I really need to talk about the issue of dominance and submission and taking your power back in relationships in which you may have given your power away. And this relates to the idea of reintegrating your power, okay? So we talked about the shadow, that's your disowned power, but we also need to talk about the dynamic of dominance and submission, okay? Because we live in a domination culture. So let me explain what I mean by that. So we, in our culture, and this has been true for thousands and thousands of years, we have not only lived in a domination culture, but with a domination language, okay? So a simple way to help you to understand that is to say, when people say something like, you make me so angry, or I can't believe that, that person did that to me, or, just simple things. It's a disowning of one's own power, and this is so deeply ingrained in us, the language of dominance and submission, that we don't even realize that we actually create the situation of dominance and submission through our language, through giving our power away, even the power of our own emotions, okay? That we think that outside situations and people make us feel a certain way. The fact that you've probably reached me through my YouTube channel, where I do political astrology. So I do talk a lot about Trump. And I know that a lot of people are going through this experience of a lot of anxiety around what's happening politically. And the anxiety is completely understandable, and I do empathize. And yet, ultimately, the only way we can truly empower ourselves isn't just through the vote or through protest, if that's what we want to do. The only way we can truly restore our own power is to stop giving it away, in the sense that the reason why Donald Trump has power is because people actually give it away to him in their emotional states. And that may sound harsh and unempathetic, but honestly, until you can truly understand that, you will not be able to take your power back. And it's not just, in a sense, globally or on the macro level, but also at the micro level, like one-to-one relationships. And so we need to understand these things. So that's one of the most fundamental things, is understanding that we live in a culture of dominance and submission, which means a power over, power under kind of dynamic. And to restore power, it needs to be power with, okay? Which means that we don't play either role. We don't try to dominate others, and we don't get into submissive relationships either, where we give our power away, so that we can achieve power with. So obviously, working with other people who may not have the same agenda that we have of power with. So another way to think about this is the karmic drama triangle. And on the karmic drama triangle, there are 3 points, and one is the persecutor, one is the victim, and one is the rescuer. And these are other ways that we get into these dominant, submissive, power over, power under type of relationships. And so if you're playing one of those roles, and actually you can end up playing any of the 3 roles in any relationship. You can be the victim, or you can believe that you need to rescue the other person. The victim is usually the submissive. But the rescuer, while they act like they are trying to help the person, they're actually creating a power over, power under dynamic. And so, because the rescuer believes that this person is not capable of rescuing themselves. I have to help you. You're not capable. And see how that creates a dominant submissive relationship, even though, you know, fundamentally, maybe it's on some level coming from care, but it's also coming from getting a sense of an enlarged ego, trying to feed the ego by believing that one is subtly better than the other. I need to rescue you. See how I'm better than you? That's a dominant submissive power over, power under relationship. Instead of believing that the person is perfectly capable of taking care of themselves, which they are, because the rescuer is actually creating an enabling situation. And then the victim gets into learned helplessness, so they create that relationship. And but what's interesting is that when we go around, we end up on all positions of the triangle. So let's say first you consider yourself the victim, or actually it might work this way. First you're the rescuer, okay? You've come into the situation, you realize that these people, there's something wrong with them, they're broken, they're dysfunctional, whatever. You need to rescue them. You see your superior, you need to rescue them. So, and by the way, having something to offer someone is not the same thing as rescuing them. There's a big, big difference. But let's say that you're in this karmic drama triangle and you have a belief which is actually embedded in us because of the fact that we grow up in this domination submission culture. And this, it happens with men too, but it seems to happen a lot with women. This Florence Nightingale kind of, I would actually call it a pathology. And it does come from care, okay? I do want to be clear about that. There is a very strong caring energy embedded in that, but it gets interwoven with the strengthening of the ego. And I want to be very clear, there's nothing wrong with the ego. Everybody has an ego. Everybody needs a strong ego. The question is what builds the ego, okay? So if we build the ego through somehow, even in a subtle way, having dominance over another person, that's not forming a healthy ego because it's dependent on that dominant relationship. So let's just say that we start out as the rescuer, okay? And we get into it believing that we have good motivations, because on some level we do have good motivations, but unfortunately it gets interwoven with the patterns of dominance and submission that have been embedded in us since childhood, since we started learning the language, since we started living in this culture. So we don't realize that we're creating a power over, power under relationship. And then when the other person doesn't respond the way we think they should, then we feel victimized, okay? So now we move into the victim position in the relationship. And we resent them, okay? We might feel all kinds of things toward them. We might feel hurt. We might feel harmed. We might feel they did us wrong. We might feel they were ungrateful. And so then the relationship changes, and we're no longer in the dominant submission. We switch positions with them, and we're now in the submissive power under position, and they are in the power over position. And so now we feel like the victim in the relationship, because look how much I gave and you don't appreciate it, or look how you took advantage of me, you know, and you ungrateful SOB, you know, and all the things that people say. And when they've put themselves into that martyr relationship. And so again, that's the rescuer moving into the victim position. But then once they get angry, then they move into the persecutor position. And then it's like, oh, all I did for you and you don't appreciate it. You know, I'm sure you've all heard that before. I'm sure all of us fall into that drama triangle at some point in our lives, because we have not yet learned how to establish healthy boundaries. And we learn through the mistakes that we fall into. You know, I had a situation even back in it's 2015. I fell into a relationship in which I ended up in a kind of victim situation in which someone was trying to rescue me. And I won't go into all the details, but when I didn't reciprocate the way that they wanted me to, then they became the persecutor, you know, the martyr, and very resentful, and very vengeful also. But I learned from that, you know, and I also learned that I created that situation. I'm not blaming that person at all. It was an incredible learning experience for me. I learned how I gave my power away in that relationship. And I didn't realize consciously I was doing that, but maybe on some level I did. I knew that there was something unstable about the situation. And yet I didn't want to look honestly at that, because in some way I was benefiting from the situation. So we all fall into these patterns at some point in our lives. There's no shame or blame around this. It's just an understanding that this is a natural phenomenon, and all of us have fallen into it. The issue is about recognizing it so that you can step out of it, so that you can learn how to set healthy boundaries and take back your power. Okay, so that's the first thing, is understanding that we are actually we are born into a dominant submission type of culture, with a language that reinforces it constantly. Everything from our culture is reinforcing the whole idea of dominance and submission. And so what we need to learn is how to establish power with relationships. And so the interesting thing is it may seem easy if you're in the position that could very easily fall into a dominance position, to take advantage of that if you're that kind of person. But like I said, if you have the Florence Nightingale pathology, you actually would slip into the submissive position. Neither one is healthy. They both need correction. And then the other thing is, ironically, that in these dominant submissive relationships, sometimes the submissive is actually the one who is more dominant. It's fascinating. So what we need to do is we need to look absolutely honestly at the truth about ourselves and the power dynamics in our relationships. And so that's what the observation and journaling is all about. When you see yourself in a relationship where you feel like you're giving your power away, the first most important thing to understand is nobody can do anything to you. And on the most fundamental spiritual level, that even means that they cannot. I'll tell you a story about this is an old story of the Buddha and a samurai, a great warrior. And he wanted to believe that he was the most powerful person on the planet. And he had heard about this Buddha who apparently was even more powerful than him. So he went to this Buddha, and the Buddha was sitting in the lotus position. And he said to him, I am the greatest warrior of this land. I can take my sword and slice you in two without blinking an eye. And the Buddha responded to him, I can be sliced in two without blinking an eye. So who was the most powerful between the two? And that is the truth. On a fundamental spiritual level, no one, under any circumstance, can take your power away unless you give it away, okay? That's the first most important thing. And again, there's no shame or blame. We all fall into this pattern. It's part of the human biography, okay? We all go through these lessons. So there's absolutely no shame or blame or judgment, okay? And it's simply a matter of observing and then learning to take back your power, okay? So it might seem a little bit actually easier when you can see clearly this dominant submissive relationship where you've given your power away, you're going to take it back, okay? And then the other, though, is if you are in the submissive position and you are subtly manipulating someone. And this is a much, much trickier one to see through. And so, you know, the way it works is like, and the reason why I know all of these things is because I trained intensively in nonviolent communication by Marshall Rosenberg, PhD, for 5 years. I've trained ever since I began in April of 2011, but it took 5 years of intensive training to become accredited in nonviolent communication. And during that time was when these kinds of relationships were very illuminated for me. And I saw how I fell into these patterns, just like everyone does. And so another relationship, which also came to an end in 2015, I was on the other side of the coin. And I was in the position of the submissive. And actually, I don't think I've ever been in I don't see myself as ever being in the dominant position because I'm just not that kind of person. Like, I don't want to take other people's power away. I want them to be empowered. But there have been times when I've given my power away. But in this particular relationship of dominance and submission, I was the submissive, but I didn't realize I was actually very manipulative in this relationship without even realizing it. And the way I would do that is I would say things like, you know, oh, just give me a call whenever it's convenient for you. And always so easygoing and, you know, offering things and trying to be a good friend and so on and so forth. And actually it was a man that I was in love with and wanted that feeling reciprocated, but it never was. And but there was enough to string me along for a long time. But the funny thing is that I played into that. You know, I played my own manipulative games. I used my feminine wiles, and I kept the relationship going for way longer than it should have too, until I woke up to the reality of the situation that I was actually in, that I was giving my power away. And not only that, but that I manipulated as well, because you know, as much as we may not want to admit it, there is power in the feminine wiles, and that's why women use it. And it doesn't justify any kind of violence that men may perpetuate against women. I'm not blaming the victim in those kinds of situations. I'm just saying that if women are honest, truly, truly honest, they see how they do use their feminine wiles to manipulate and And in those situations, while it may look like dominance and submission, the woman is actually the one who is more manipulative. And that's just about being honest, you know. And we're not going to break out of these patterns unless we are willing to be absolutely 100% honest with ourselves. And that's how we take back our power. Okay, that's why observation is so important. And I'm talking about honest observation, not about telling the story about he did this and she did that and they shouldn't have done that. All that does is perpetuate. It doesn't take back your power. And the thing about it is that if you see yourself telling a story like that, now you know, okay? You maybe didn't know before, but now you know. So it's up to you to take back your power, okay? And I'm here to support you in that 100%. I don't want to take anybody's power away from them. I have no desire. I've got enough on my own plate, you know. It's like, I don't need to take care of anybody. I don't need to dominate anybody. I don't want it. I want all of you who are watching this video, listening to me, to know I 100% support you in owning your own power. And this is very much a first chakra issue, okay? It's also a first house issue in astrology and a second house issue in astrology, because the second house is all about self-worth and access to resources. And power is a resource, and it is born out of self-worth. So this is how we begin to open up the first chakra and clear out any wounded karmic patterns that we're holding on to. And as we clear that out, a kind of alchemy occurs, which is that there may be, we'll hold these patterns, these karmic wounded patterns, as clumps of energy. And they are in our energetic body. They're stored in our chakras. And so, let's see how to describe this. Get a little bit more comfortable. Okay, so just take a moment and focus on your first chakra. That's where your body meets the earth. So as an example, that's where you are sitting on the chair or wherever it is you're sitting. You're actually sitting on your first chakra. And so it's where our bodies meet the earth. And it's where our needs get met, our basic needs get met. And this does relate to both the first house of astrology and the second house of astrology. The first house is the sense of self, self-esteem, self-image, the ego, in a sense, the persona. And the second house is then how we believe that we have a right to access resources. And the issue is that in nonviolent communication, sometimes people don't use the word right. The reason why they don't use it is because it implies that someone is going to give it to you. And in nonviolent communication, there's no such thing, okay? There's no such thing as other people, you know, giving you your needs, okay? Only we can meet our needs. Only I can meet my need for power. No one can give it to me. Only I can meet my need for power. Only I can meet my need for a sense of self. No one can give that to me. No one can actually validate me. Only I can meet my need for validation. So when it comes to the first house or second house in astrology, when it comes to the first chakra, that's the first most important thing. There is nothing and no one outside of you who can meet your needs other than yourself. Now there's something else called strategy. So for example, you know, like when it comes to the basic needs, food and shelter and such, I may have a strategy to go and get some food to feed myself, okay? But still, I'm the one who's meeting my needs. There's only a time in life as children when we literally are dependent on the external world to meet our needs. But that's the whole idea of ego formation, is as we form a self, we become responsible for meeting those needs. So as an adult, we are then 100% responsible for meeting those needs. And so the first house is about self-responsibility. If you give your power away to the world instead of taking it back is self-responsibility. Taking it back is knowing that only you can meet your needs. Now you may have a strategy to go out to something or someone external to get food, or to make money, or to get housing, or to get education, or even to get empathy. You know, it's like we may go to a close, trusted family or friend, or even a counselor to get empathy. That's a strategy. And yet still, we're the only ones who can truly meet that need, because if I need power, if I need empathy, if I need compassion, if I need connection, if I need trust, if I need, I think I said empathy, if I need any of these things, then ultimately I'm the one who's responsible for meeting those needs. I mean, I'm assuming every single person who's listening to this video wants that. And yet we do give our power away. And the reason we do is, one, because it's ingrained in us. It's what we were taught from birth, basically. The entire culture, the language, everything taught us that. So that's why I keep saying there's no blame or shame in this, because it's not, in that sense, it's not your fault, okay? You know, we're all born into this. But once you know, once the information is brought into your awareness and your consciousness, then it becomes up to you. And if you choose to give your power away at that point, when you know you have a choice, then you know, then you have to ask yourself why. What part of you, which is your disowned power, sees benefit in giving your power away? Because like I said, the submissive can actually be even more manipulative than the dominant. Sometimes we give our power away because we don't want to take responsibility. And so again, I am not judging anyone. There's absolutely no shame or blame in what I'm saying. At the same time, I'm also saying you now have this information in your hands, in your conscious mind. You now have a tool that you can use. Now you can choose to take responsibility. And if you find yourself in a dominant submissive relationship, you know you have the power now to correct that. And the strategies for correcting that can be infinite. Strategies are infinite. But very briefly, examples of that are: remove yourself from that relationship. If you're on a karmic drama triangle with someone, or if you're in a power over, power under, dominant submissive relationship, whichever position you're in, remove yourself from that relationship if you have to. And if that's not, if you don't consider that to be an option, then correct the relationship, correct the balance of power. There's one or, but actually, even though I said that it was infinite, really there's just one or two options. You either you stay in it, or you get out of it, or you correct it. I guess there really are only three. Most strategies are infinite, but in this situation there's probably only three. So again, you know, if you do find yourself in that kind of situation, you're just going to have to choose one of those three strategies. Get out of the relationship, stay with it and its unhealthy dynamics, or change it. And so let me see if I could say a little bit more about how you go about changing it once you recognize it. And if if the choice you've made is not, you're not going to stay in it the way it is, and you're not necessarily ready to leave, because it can be hard if you're talking about something like family relationships. Those can be hard to leave, and they're karmic, you know, because they're meant to teach us something. Sometimes we really get to the point where we have no other choice but to leave that relationship. It is so dysfunctional and toxic. But if by chance you're in a relationship and you would like to try to correct these dynamics, so the first thing, again, is taking responsibility and saying and recognizing that no one can do anything to you. I mean, literally, I told you a story about the Buddha. No one can do anything to you. Practice it with Trump. I know it drives a lot of people crazy, but you've got to recognize that every time you let yourself get triggered around Donald Trump or the Republicans, you've given your power away. Because believe me, that's even if it's not conscious, on a subconscious level, that is what they want. They want you to feel off guard. They want you to feel powerless. They want you to believe you have no power, because they want to be in the dominant position. And so when they make you feel like you're in the midst of this incredible, disruptive, chaotic energy where you feel powerless, they've won. Okay. The only way to change that is to take back your power and say, you're not going to do that to me anymore. That's where we have the power. We can take it back. And so that's an example. Another example, well, I think I'm going to have to get more specific with, you know, like I basically read all of the responses that I received to my more recent videos and questions, and I felt like it was necessary to really give you this foundation around accessing your personal power, taking back your power, so that you can understand these dynamics that we grow up in this world and how to take back your power. And again, it is related to the healing of the first chakra, and it is related to the first and second house, where the first house being our fundamental sense of self and self-responsibility, and the second house, which is the access to resources, and power is a resource. Okay, so in order to go into more specific detail about specific situations, I feel that I need to make an explicit request of people who did respond to me, and let them know, is it okay if I use your example? So here I was just talking generally, you know, broadly. I see this pattern showing up in a number of different responses that I've received. But to get more specific, I really want to make sure I make an explicit request. And that's part of, you know, the whole idea of Power With. It's like, I want to make sure that I am respecting people's boundaries. So, so I will make that request and see if I have at least one willing student who will let me use an example that is very specific and I guess detailed, you know, because it can be very vulnerable to share that. Even if you're doing it anonymously, it can still feel very vulnerable. So I will make sure that I have an explicit permission to do that. So that's it for now, for today, and keep checking in. I'm driving to Denver today, and And so I'm going to be on the road. I'm in Grand Junction right now. I'm driving to Denver, and then I will be flying to San Francisco. So I'm traveling this week, but I will still be checking in, and because I can, as long as I have internet connection, I can make a video and send it off. So, so we'll stay in touch. And again, please feel free to share any questions you have, anything that's coming up this week. I am more than happy to receive your emails. So that's it for today, and I will talk to you again next time. Bye-bye.